and I've got 100 silver coins, I've got a piece of paper saying I've got 100 silver coins, and he's going to sell me 5 head of cattle. So I get my paper, and I walk 20 miles to town, find the silver merchant, get my coins, walk 20 miles back to him, give him the coins. He walks to the silver merchant, gives the coins, takes the paper, and walks back. Well, that doesn't really happen. You know what happens? If I've got a piece of paper saying I've got coins at the silversmith, what I will do is I'll just give this paper. It's called a warehouse receipt, meaning there's wheat or gold or silver in storage for me. This paper represents 100% of it. I'll give the farmer the paper, then in his convenience, he'll go redeem the paper and get the coins. Well, actually what happens is the farmer will get the paper, and he'll go to the shoe store and get some shoes, and he'll go to the glass store and get some glass. And these paper warehouse receipts, these notes, will be passing around through the community and not being redeemed, not being turned in. So you know what the next step is. The silversmith has got people giving him silver coins and taking back paper. And the silversmith finds out in about a few months or a few years that people, instead of redeeming this paper, trade it among themselves. They're not using money, they're using paper that stands for money as currency to conduct their exchanges. What is the next thing the silversmith found out? That from time to time people do come and redeem paper and pick up silver and gold coins, but seldom, not very much. He finds out that 90% of this silver sitting in the back of the warehouse gathering dust, without about 10% used coming and going all the time. What's the next step? The silversmith will start lending out the silver and gold in storage for interest and making money. He'll make 10% off your money sitting there, even though you may be paying silver, may pay storage and insurance. But there is money coming, there is redemptions going on all the time, but it evens out in the course of a period of time around 10%. Nobody comes and redeems all their money at the same time. So what you're going to find out is, after people start using coins, you start having substitutes for coins to show up. Paper money is something that stands for it. When the silversmith starts loaning money out to get back, to collect interest, he then becomes a bank. And he starts making money. I have here an old replica of a banknote. This right here is a warehouse receipt. Well, this bank issued this private money, this $5 here, and it says on here that this bank will pay $5 on demand, a demand note. But the bank started issuing these things. Instead of carrying these heavy coins around, I'll get this $5 note, and anytime I need my money, I go give this to the bank and they give me the $5. But actually what happens is people pass this around. Nobody redeems all the money at the same time. Therefore the bank loans out 4.5 of that $5 for interest. Well, what happens when the government sees the private banks making all that money? The politicians, they jump into the picture. So the politicians get into the business of issuing wheat receipts. The politicians will, here's a Federal Reserve note put out by a government bank or private bank, really. And it says on here, the United States of America, that's our government, will pay to the bearer, whoever's carrying this piece of paper, on demand, $1,000. This is not money. They will pay dollars on demand. It says written right here, this note is redeemable in lawful money. At the United States Treasury or any federal bank, this is redeemable in money. This is not money. This is a certificate or a note. We pass this around. Now I have right here a silver certificate. So this is what we used to use in our currency. Our federal government used to issue silver certificates. It says right here, this certifies that there is on deposit in the Treasury of the United States $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. This is a silver certificate that says that our government has silver on demand, sitting there, they'll trade you. And the silver certificate stands for money, but is not money. What happens is private banks will start issuing paper money when only part of the paper money is backed by silver. They don't keep 100% reserve. They'll keep 80 and 90% of the money loaned out and 10 and 20% on reserve to handle your demands for specie hard money. And then our government jumps into it too. Well, after government starts printing paper money and people begin to accept it, what's the next step? The next step is always the government will then issue unbacked money, fiat currency. They'll issue a note or certificate that is not backed by silver and gold. If you look in your wallets now, you'll find that you have a bunch of Federal Reserve notes. These are not backed by silver and gold. They're backed by the faith of the American people in the politician and the ignorance in what money is, what money isn't. The Federal Reserve note is backed by ignorance and faith. And let me tell you something, all those things are commodities that come and go. It's only a matter of time before the American people wise up, turn in their Federal Reserve notes, and those who turn in first will get silver, those who turn in later will receive nothing. All paper monies start out the same way. They start out as silver and gold coins, and then private people issue notes. Then government starts issuing notes. At first, it's 100% backed by silver and gold. But after a while, the banks or the private citizens, the silversmiths, or the governments start spending that money and using it and only keep a little bit there. But eventually, they'll get rid of having the money backed, the Federal Reserve notes backed by any currency, and it'll start being regular fiat, unbacked currency. That always happens. Then what's the next step? You have runaway inflation and eventual collapse of the currency. Let me tell you something. All paper monies eventually collapse. The oldest paper money we have in the world right now is put out by the British government. It's losing its value, of course, as fast as our Federal Reserve notes. But very seldom do you see a paper currency last more than 100 years. All of them collapse eventually. We had here earlier the Federal Reserve note from my great-great-grandmother. She put her life savings in these things in April 1865. These things became worthless. They were worth zero, nada, nothing, zilch. Her life savings, her retirement plans all went up in smoke. When she died, she left a great big old box full of these things. When I was a little boy, we used to go play with them. We'd make paper airplanes out of them and nail them on the wall and just play with them. I think this is the last one. But they weren't worth anything at all. The children just played with them. Y'all might look at that. But if she had put her money in silver and gold, it would have been something. All paper monies eventually destruct into nothing. I have right here the paper currency of the government of South Vietnam. In April of 1975, this thing is worth zilch, nothing. The communists took over their country and their paper money became worthless. And this happens all the time. But the people in the Confederacy and also in South Vietnam, you might pass this around, they put their savings in silver and gold. At the end of the war, political turmoils, they had something. They had a security. As a matter of fact, they could buy a great number of other items for practically nothing. You're familiar in the South, at the end of the Civil War, the people from up north came down there buying things up, and these people were called carpetbaggers. What it is, they had just a little bit of silver and gold, and they could go buy vast plantations and mansions and whole factories just for a handful of silver and gold. The people in the South didn't have anything, and they'd do about anything for what little they had. They had to get silver and gold to use it for something. And of course, some of the Southerners did not support the South, but put their money in silver and gold. At the end of the war, they became very wealthy. And you see this all the time. But what governments do is they'll eventually inflate the currency into nothing. I have right here, this is a real note here. This is a 200 million mark note. This right here was put out by the German government during their famous inflation. Everybody here is familiar with the runaway inflation the German government had in 1922 and 1923, where their currency collapsed, and people would take a bushel of these things to go buy a loaf of bread. This is 200 million mark note. The time it's issued, it wouldn't buy a piece of bubble gum. So it not even printed on this side. It's too expensive to print it on both sides. Just print it on one side. In 1913, the German mark was roughly equivalent to the U.S. dollar. The German mark would have bought basically an ounce of silver. In 1913, somebody had 10,000 marks, they're very wealthy. In 1923, a lot of people lost everything they had. As a matter of fact, this 200 million mark note, if I'd had this in 1913, I could have bought the whole city of Berlin, every house and every vehicle in it. I'd have been a very wealthy man. In 1923, 10 years later, this 200 mark note's, of course, worthless. But a lot of people lost their savings. During the great German inflation, people that had their money in government bonds lost every single thing they had. They had their money in corporation bonds, or had it in, and they loaned it to people, but they couldn't get it back in a hurry, couldn't call it in, they lost everything they had. Some insurance policies, people lost everything they had. Other people had their money in silver and gold. They became very wealthy. Other people had their money in real estate, and they came out all right. Other people had their life savings, retirement plans, and stocks. And some stocks do good during rapid inflation, others do very bad. So if you prepare for potential survival times, you can come out a great deal ahead. During the great German inflation, the insurance companies would pay people off early. In 1913, say you bought a 50,000 mark insurance policy. In 1923, they'd call you in and say, hey, you have all your money 10 years early. We'll go ahead and pay you the cash proceeds of your policy 10 years early, and this is a great benefit for people. But after a while, the government didn't even bother to write people a letter telling them to come in and collect the policy early. I mean, the private insurance companies didn't do it. Why not? That's because a postage stamp costs more than 50,000 marks. But people that had their money tied up in fixed loans, investments, lost everything they had. And it could happen in this country. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is how you can design your savings plan and your investment plan to prepare for possible, which could happen, survival times of general financial collapse. Well, here's another thing you need to watch out when you deal with governments. I have right here two currencies. These right here military payment certificates that were issued to the United States soldiers in Vietnam during the war over there. You notice there are two different colors. This color right here is some type of green color, and this one over here, is purple. What it is, when I first got there, we got our paycheck and cashed it in at the PX or the bank, and they issued us this green currency, and that's what we spent. But from time to time, the government would have a currency change and switched over to a different color. Same paper, same figure, same value, just different color. And at the time they had the currency conversion, they told everybody to change their green money for purple money. If you didn't do it on time, and you didn't do it within the two days to do it, you lost everything you had. Because they refused to accept these. The banks and people refused to accept this colored money and only accept this. And the purpose of this was to keep down the black market, or catch the black market operators. Now we know about free enterprise economics, and we know that the black market is the free market, and its response to consumer desires outside the command and the power of the government. But what our army was trying to do was catch the black market operators having a whole bunch of these, call a conversion, and anybody that turned in a bunch of these had to have paperwork and proof that they had these legally. If they didn't have that, they wouldn't issue them the new money, and then they'd be holding a worthless piece of paper. Of course, the black market operators, they in the system, they knew how it worked, they knew about it in advance, they had connections and pulled at the banks. They went over there and traded their old money in for new money and came out normal. The problem was the poor infantry soldiers were way out in the field doing what they're supposed to be doing. And they out someplace 100 miles from the banks of PX, and word comes down for them to exchange their money. They got no way of getting in there to change their money. They come in a week or two later, sorry, baby, it's too late. So you're out doing what you're supposed to be doing, you end up with nothing. But that really happened. I saw a lot of the poor soldiers cash their paychecks in, and 2 weeks later, they stuck with nothing, all this worthless paper money. But I keep saying that paper money inflates into nothing. That's true. It always happens. The inevitable always happens.